As a prejudiced officer patrols City View Park, he notices a man sitting quietly on a bench feeding pigeons and chatting with passers-by. To the officer, this is just another ordinary black man, and his bias blinds him to the truth. He approaches with hostility, demanding the man leave, saying he doesn't belong there. But the man on the bench, none other than the legendary Mike Tyson, refuses to budge. Frustrated and emboldened by his own authority, the officer escalates, striking Mike with his baton. What happens next is a powerful lesson the officer will never forget. Subscribe and like this video to uncover the full story of how Mike Tyson turned the tables in a way only he could. The scene begins on a bright, sunny day in City View Park. It's a breathtaking day in City View Park. The sun shines brilliantly over a picture-perfect landscape of lush green grass and clear blue skies. Families gather for picnics, children run and play with boundless energy, and joggers glide along the trails in a steady rhythm. Amidst this cheerful scene, Mike Tyson, the legendary boxer, sits quietly on a bench. Dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, he exudes a calm and unassuming presence. A handful of birdseed rests in his hand as a flock of pigeons gathers around him, their gentle coos blending with the sounds of the park. Mike's expression softens as he notices a young boy nearby, captivated by the serene sight. With wide eyes and a face glowing with excitement, the boy sprints toward the bench, unable to contain his curiosity. The boy's face glows with excitement as he inches closer to the bench, his small feet barely touching the ground. He bounces in place, anticipation radiating from him like a spark. Suddenly, he blurts out his question in a breathless rush, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. Are you Mike Tyson?" Still smiling, Mike turns to look at the boy. His eyes gleam with a warmth that feels worlds apart from the ferocious boxer everyone knows. "That's right, kid," he replies, his voice deep and rich, carrying a calm, almost fatherly tone. Mike chuckles softly, his broad shoulders shaking slightly as he takes in the boy's uncontainable enthusiasm. "Want an autograph?" Mike asks, a playful twinkle in his eyes. The boy nods vigorously, his face glowing with a mix of disbelief and pure delight. Tyson takes the notepad offered by the boy, his fingers moving skillfully with the pen. With just a few quick strokes, his signature graces the paper like a carefully crafted piece of art. The boy's face lights up with pride as he clutches the notepad close to his chest. Before he can say anything else, his mother's voice calls him back, her gratitude toward Mike evident in her tone. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels makes his way through the park. His patrol is a daily routine marked by scowling and a presence meant to intimidate. His rigid stride and air of superiority seem designed to demand respect, or at least fear, from anyone he encounters. With his close-cropped hair and mirrored sunglasses, Officer Daniels' piercing eyes remain hidden as they scan the park with steely precision. His every movement exudes authority, his presence calculated to provoke unease or fear. As he rounds a corner, his gaze locks onto a striking scene. Mike Tyson, the legendary boxer, calmly feeding pigeons. The birds flutter around him, forming a serene halo of tranquility. Daniels's lips curl into a sneer, his gaze narrowing into a cold, calculating slit. "Just great," he mutters under his breath, his expression hardening with every step he takes toward Tyson. His words drip with bitterness and judgment as he mutters to himself, "Another one loitering around here." His tone is filled with disdain, a harsh reflection of his deeply ingrained bias. Daniel's gaze sharpens, accusatory and filled with prejudice. "Probably up to no good," he thinks to himself, his inner narrative dripping with cynicism. Wouldn't be surprised if he starts causing trouble. A smirk forms on his face as he imagines the satisfaction of asserting his authority and running Mike Tyson out of the park. The weight of his badge fuels his inflated sense of power, making him feel untouchable. Officer Daniels, a self-proclaimed guardian of the park, strides closer to Tyson with an air of superiority. His posture radiates intimidation, standing tall, shoulders squared, and chin thrust forward like a blade ready to cut through any resistance. "Hey!" Daniels barks, his tone as sharp and biting as a whip. "You can't just sit here all day! Move along! You can't sit here all day! Move along!" Daniels snaps, his tone laced with irritation. Startled by the officer's aggressive approach, the pigeons scatter in a flurry of feathers and startled coos. Yet, amidst the commotion, Mike Tyson remains completely unfazed. His expression is calm, unreadable, with a faint hint of amusement playing on his face. "I'm just feeding the pigeons, man," Mike replies, his voice casual yet firm. "Is that a crime?" His calm demeanor creates a striking contrast to the officer's confrontational stance, turning the interaction into a tense verbal chess match. Daniels' eyes narrow as he sizes up Mike, his annoyance growing with each passing moment. Daniels' eyes narrow at Mike's response, his irritation simmering just beneath the surface. His hand instinctively rests on the holster at his side, a gesture as much about intimidation as preparation. "Maybe not," he concedes, his voice dripping with thinly veiled contempt. "But it sure as hell ain't right either." Frustration bubbling over, Daniels scoffs at Mike's calm demeanor, his disdain palpable. "Don't get smart with me," he snaps, his words sharp and jagged like broken glass. "I said move along." The officer's aggression swells like a rising storm, his hand inching ever closer to his holster, the implied threat hanging heavy in the air. But Mike remains completely unfazed. His gaze locks onto Daniels's, unflinching and steady, radiating an unspoken defiance that only intensifies the tension. Mike meets Daniels' escalating aggression with a steely, unyielding stare. His body language, solid as granite, communicates that he isn't intimidated. "I'm not going anywhere," Mike says, his words slow and deliberate, each one landing with the weight of a heavyweight punch. The tension in the air begins to attract attention, and a small crowd gathers nearby. Whispers and murmurs ripple through the onlookers, their curiosity heightening the already charged atmosphere. In stark contrast to the officer's simmering anger, Mike remains composed, seated calmly on the bench as if they were merely having a casual conversation. His voice, measured and unflappable, carries an air of quiet defiance. "I'm not bothering anyone," he reiterates firmly. "I think you've got the wrong idea about me. I'm just enjoying the park, like everyone else." "I think you've got the wrong idea about me," Mike says calmly, his tone unwavering. "I'm just enjoying the park, like everyone else." But Daniels isn't having it. His simmering frustration boils over into an inferno of rage. He leans forward, his face mere inches from Mike's, his veins bulging with intensity as he locks eyes with the unshaken boxer. "I don't care who you think you are," Daniels growls, his voice a low, menacing rumble. "Get up, now!" The words explode from his mouth in a roar, his breath hot and heavy against Mike's face. The crowd, frozen in a mix of fear and anticipation, collectively inhales at the sight. All eyes are locked on the standoff, the tension so thick it's almost tangible. The crowd watches in stunned silence, awe and tension rippling through their collective reaction. Then, in an instant, Daniel's patience snaps like a brittle twig. With fury coursing through him, his baton becomes an extension of his rage as he lashes out. The impact lands with a deafening crack, the sound echoing through the park like a thunderclap. The baton strikes Mike Tyson's shoulder, sending shockwaves of horror and disbelief through the crowd. Mike, momentarily taken aback by the sudden attack, lets out a low grunt of pain. His body tenses, muscles coiling as though bracing for another blow. The crowd's response is immediate and visceral. A symphony of gasps and cries of protest erupts around them, the park now buzzing with disbelief and outrage at what they've just witnessed. The crowd's cries erupt like a dormant volcano finally awakening, the outrage building to a fever pitch. Mike Tyson, calm yet commanding, rises from his seated position. His sheer height and imposing figure tower over Officer Daniels, casting a long shadow that seems to grow with each deliberate movement. His actions are slow, controlled, each step radiating a simmering intensity that sends chills through the air. Despite the throbbing pain in his shoulder, Mike's face remains unreadable, his expression stoic. His dark, steady eyes are like still water, calm on the surface but hinting at the power beneath. He fixes his gaze on Daniels, unflinching, and the silence between them becomes thick with an unspoken challenge. The murmurs of the crowd gradually fade as every eye locks onto the unfolding standoff. It's as if the entire park is holding its breath, bracing for what comes next. Before the captivated crowd, Mike Tyson stands firm, his presence commanding. His voice, low and deliberate, cuts through the heavy silence like a whisper that carries the weight of mountains. "You didn't have to do that," Mike utters, his words calm but laced with an undercurrent of repressed rage. Daniels, momentarily caught off guard by Mike's restraint, stumbles over his response. You should have just listened," he stammers, his tone still trying to cling to authority but now tinged with the unmistakable edge of fear. The tension in the air grows thicker, almost suffocating, as the crowd falls completely silent, their focus locked on the confrontation. Daniels forces a smirk, a weak attempt to mask his crumbling confidence. His eyes dart nervously as he clings to the last shreds of his bravado, but the growing fear in his demeanor is impossible to hide. Daniels, his nerves visibly fraying, takes a hesitant step closer to Mike Tyson. His hand grips the baton tightly, as though it's the only thing anchoring his dwindling sense of control. "What are you going to do about it?" he taunts, his voice strained, bravado masking the thinly veiled panic that quivers beneath the surface. His eyes dart nervously to the baton in his hand, as if weighing his next move. But the sheer presence of Mike Tyson seems to drain his courage with each passing second. Mike, unshaken by Daniel's hollow threats, stands firm. His posture is unyielding, an unmovable force. With the slow, deliberate pace of a stalking tiger, he takes a step closer to the officer. Every motion radiates authority, his towering presence an immovable wall of calm, yet unrelenting power. Mike's voice drops to a low growl, each word carrying the weight of an unspoken promise. "I could show you," he says, his tone steady and commanding. "But first, you're going to apologize to these people for what you just did." The crowd, captivated by Mike's steely resolve, edges closer. Their eyes widen, every moment of the unfolding drama etched into their expressions. Daniel's smug facade begins to crack under the weight of the pressure. He hesitates, taking an uneasy step back, his confidence faltering. In a brittle attempt to regain control, he lets out a nervous laugh, a weak echo of defiance that barely conceals his growing fear. "Apologize?" he spits, his voice dripping with mockery. His tone carries a desperate edge as he struggles to maintain his authority, but the cracks in his demeanor are all too visible. "To you?" Daniels sneers, shaking his head. "Not a chance, Tyson. Not a chance in hell." The crowd, sensing the volatile tension hanging in the air like a lit fuse, holds their breath. Every word, every movement, feels like it could ignite the situation into chaos. Mike Tyson's patience, stretched to its absolute limit, shows in the clenching of his jaw. Beneath his calm exterior simmers a primal rage, restrained but unmistakable. Daniels, emboldened by his own brazen defiance, lunges forward, his baton a blur of motion, a streak of violence aimed at asserting his dominance. But Mike, his reflexes honed to razor-sharp precision, moves like lightning. With ease, his hand intercepts the blow, gripping the baton with the unyielding strength of an iron vice. Mike's hand clamps around the baton like an iron vice, stopping it mid-swing with effortless precision. The crowd erupts into a chorus of awe and shock, their collective gasps and cheers filling the park as they witness the incredible display of power. With a single fluid motion, Mike wrenches the weapon from Daniel's grasp as though it weighs nothing. Daniel stumbles backward, his eyes wide with disbelief. The color drains from his face as the realization of his mistake washes over him like a cold wave. Mike Tyson, his voice now a low, deadly whisper, fixes his unyielding stare on Daniels. His expression hardens into an unforgiving mask of retribution. "You messed with the wrong guy today," Mike growls, his words cutting through the air like a blade. The threat in his voice is as tangible as the simmering anger in his eyes. "You messed with the wrong guy," Mike continues, his voice steady and laced with undeniable authority. "In the wrong city, on the wrong day. And now, you're going to pay the price." Daniel's bravado evaporates like morning mist under the harsh sunlight. He takes another step back, his feet betraying the fear he's desperately trying to conceal. His desperation becomes obvious as he lashes out in a final act of defiance, throwing a wild, untrained punch. But Mike Tyson, with reflexes sharpened by years in the ring, moves like a shark in water, fluid, swift, and precise. He dodges the clumsy blow effortlessly, and in the same motion, counters with a series of strikes. Each hit is delivered with the precision of a master, landing with devastating accuracy. Daniels, overwhelmed and powerless against Mike's expertise, stumbles as his defenses crumble under the relentless onslaught. Each strike lands with devastating accuracy, leaving Daniels caught completely off guard and overwhelmed. Staggering backward, his defenses crumble under the relentless barrage from Mike Tyson. Like a drowning man grasping for salvation, Daniels flails his arms wildly, desperate to regain control. But it's no use. Mike's dazzling display of martial prowess is unstoppable, his precision and power driving Daniels to his knees. The crowd, electrified by the spectacle, erupts into ecstatic cheers. A symphony of chants and shouts reverberates through the park, the energy reminiscent of a medieval jousting match. Onlookers quickly whip out their phones, capturing every moment of the dramatic showdown, their cameras flashing like a swarm of fireflies drawn to the chaos. The crowd's phones are raised high, their cameras capturing every second of the momentous clash, like a swarm of flies descending upon a feast. From the crowd, Dwayne Johnson, known to most as The Rock, steps forward, clapping along with the spectators. His eyes shine with admiration as they lock onto Mike Tyson, a silent acknowledgement of the boxer's unmatched skill and composure. Mike Tyson, the very picture of grace under pressure, stands firm. He watches as Daniels, battered and humbled, struggles to his feet. Despite his clear victory, Mike's expression remains impassive, his eyes offering a glimpse into the depths of his ironclad self-control. "I could have hurt you," Mike says, his tone calm and measured, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions in the park. "But that's not who I am," Mike continues, his voice steady and resolute. "I'm not like you." The crowd, moved by the sheer restraint and dignity in Mike's words, falls silent. They hold their breath, captivated by the powerful moment unfolding before them. Officer Daniels, his once bold bravado now reduced to tatters, stumbles under the crushing weight of Mike Tyson's words. The reality of his defeat begins to sink in. His eyes dart nervously around the crowd, searching for an escape. But all he finds are the unblinking, judgmental eyes of the spectators. In their faces, the people he was sworn to protect, Daniel sees the stark truth. His actions have irreparably tarnished his badge and the authority it once symbolized. His expression twists into one of shame and regret, his shoulders sagging under the crushing weight of his disgrace. Daniel's expression twists into one of deep shame, his shoulders sagging like a broken puppet, lifeless under the weight of his humiliation. Mike Tyson, his voice powerful and unrelenting, strikes at the core of Daniel's pride like a hammer hitting an anvil. He points toward the crowd, his words carrying the weight of undeniable justice. "These people," he declares, his voice echoing with authority, "saw what you did. They saw you, a representative of the law, assault an unarmed citizen, and they saw me defend them." The crowd, galvanized by Mike's words, erupts into a roar of agreement. Their cheers and shouts form a collective condemnation of Daniel's actions. Daniels, his face flushed with humiliation, can do nothing but hang his head in defeat. The crowd, now emboldened and unified, parts like a wave, clearing the way for the next chapter in this powerful moment. The crowd parts like a wave, making way for the burly form of a senior officer. His furious expression leaves no doubt about his displeasure, even before he speaks. "Daniels!" the officer bellows, his booming voice cutting through the chatter of the onlookers. "What's going on here?" His eyes narrow into accusing slits as he surveys the scene, taking in the battered and humiliated Daniels, the calm yet commanding presence of Mike Tyson, and the charged energy of the gathered crowd. Daniels, his shoulders hunched with shame, opens his mouth to respond, but no words come out. His tongue feels paralyzed by fear, the weight of his actions rendering him silent. The crowd, emboldened by Mike Tyson's heroism, surges forward. Their voices rise in a chorus of righteous indignation, pointing at Daniels. "He attacked him!" one voice cries out. "He started it!" Another echoes, their tone filled with anger and frustration. The senior officer's face darkens as he listens, his sharp gaze shifting back to Daniels, the tension in the air now thick with judgment. "He started it!" one person cries out, their voice sharp with conviction. "Yeah, he did!" Another echoes, their words adding fuel to the fire of the crowd's outrage. The senior officer listens in silence, his face growing darker with each passing moment. His stern expression doesn't waver, his ears taking in every word of the people he's sworn to protect. The weight of their indignation settles heavily in the air. Daniels, now fully aware of how precarious his situation has become, swallows hard. His eyes dart frantically between Mike Tyson, the senior officer, and the furious crowd. His cowardice is laid bare for all to see, leaving him stripped of the false authority he once wielded. The senior officer's gaze finally lands on Mike Tyson. Recognition flashes in his eyes as he takes in the familiar, legendary figure before him. Drawing himself up to his full height, the officer's stern expression softens just slightly, a hint of respect visible beneath the weight of his disapproval. The senior officer's stern expression softens into a look of genuine regret as he turns to Mike Tyson. "Mr. Tyson," he says, his voice a marked contrast to Daniel's earlier hostility. "I am so sorry about this. I assure you, this will be dealt with swiftly and justly." The crowd, relieved to see their hero treated with the respect he deserves, murmurs their approval. Their words ripple softly, a quiet wave of encouragement that fills the park. Mike Tyson, his stoic facade firmly in place, acknowledges the officer's apology with a curt nod. His voice, calm and even, carries a hint of resolute authority. "You're right," he agrees. "People like him don't deserve to wear the badge. They give the entire force a bad name." The crowd, inspired by Mike's words, erupts into applause and agreement. Their cheers further underscore the condemnation of Daniel's actions and the respect they feel for Tyson's restraint and composure. Mike's voice carries a quiet intensity as he speaks, his words striking directly at the core of Daniel's misconduct. "People like him don't deserve to wear the badge," Mike says firmly. "They give the entire force a bad name." The crowd, energized by Mike's condemnation, responds with a ripple of agreement. Their voices grow louder, a wave of approval washing over the scene. Daniels, standing frozen like a statue, can do nothing but stare at the ground. His humiliation is complete, his bravado shattered. He opens his mouth to protest, but before he can utter a word, the senior officer cuts him off with a sharp glare. "You're done, Daniels," the senior officer says, his voice thick with contempt and finality. His words slice through the air with the weight of a guillotine, leaving no room for argument. "Badge and gun. Now," the senior officer declares, each word a hammer blow to Daniel's crumbling career. The onlookers, justice gleaming in their eyes, watch with grim satisfaction as Daniels reluctantly removes his badge and gun. His hands tremble with a mixture of shame and frustration, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. Daniels, defeated and humiliated, slinks away, escorted by the senior officer like a disgraced gladiator exiting the arena. The crowd, witnessing this moment of accountability, erupts into a cacophony of cheers and applause. The noise is deafening, like a tsunami of approval crashing over the park. Amidst the celebration, Mike Tyson remains humble, his imposing figure standing silently as the applause washes over him. From the crowd, a young boy, inspired and emboldened by Mike's bravery, edges closer, his eyes wide with admiration. The young boy steps closer to Mike Tyson, his face glowing with admiration. "You're really a hero, Mr. Tyson," he says, his voice filled with a mix of awe and heartfelt gratitude. Mike, his smile warm and genuine, kneels down to meet the boy at eye level. Their gazes lock in a moment of profound connection, a quiet exchange of respect and understanding. "The real heroes," Mike says, his voice carrying the wisdom of a lifetime, "are the ones who stand up for what's right. It doesn't matter how big or small you are or what people think of you. Always remember that." The boy, his face radiant with pride and inspiration, nods vigorously. His eyes shine brightly, reflecting a newfound sense of courage and determination. With newfound resolve shining in his eyes, the young boy watches as the crowd begins to drift away. Their whispers and chatter tell the story of Mike Tyson's heroism, ready to spread like wildfire throughout the city. Mike returns to his bench, his imposing figure now relaxed as he takes a moment to soak in the serenity of the park. The pigeons, like old companions, flutter back to his side, their coos and the soft rustling of their wings creating a gentle symphony of peace and companionship. Leaning back on the bench, Mike surveys the park with a quiet sense of satisfaction. The sun casts a warm glow over the tranquil landscape, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded just moments ago. As the camera pans out, the park's calm beauty comes into focus, a reminder that even in the midst of conflict, peace can always find its way back. As the peaceful park stretches out before us, a narrator's voice gently brings the scene to a close. On this day in City View Park, a single moment changed the course of many lives. For Mike Tyson, it was a reminder of the enduring power of standing up for what's right. For the young boy, it became a lesson in courage, one he would carry with him forever. And for everyone watching, it was a demonstration of compassion, strength, and integrity. In the end, we all need heroes. And sometimes, they can be found in the most unexpected places.